Welcome to Right on Track, a songwriting podcast. Thanks to Tone for tuning in. I'm Demi Michelle Schwartz, and I'm thrilled you're joining me on my songwriting journey. So kick back and relax, don't fall flat, and remember, stay right on track. Hello everyone, welcome back to Right on Track. I am so excited to welcome a very special guest today from across the pond, Jenny Colquitt. Hi Jenny.
Hey Demi, how you doing?
I'm great, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Yeah, kind of tired, kind of excited, kind of a little bit of everything
Oh,
today.
for
It's
sure.
um it's been a crazy day.
Yeah, for sure. Well, how's your year been for you?
Crazy. And I mean, yeah, like the last kind of year or so, even like just like before that as well, pretty much since the pandemic, it's been it's been crazy. Like lots going on. I released an album and various things. So yeah, it's everything is very fast paced at the moment. There's not much chance to take in a breath. It's kind of nice to it's kind of nice to be able to chat like this for a little while. But yeah, everything's going well. So yeah, I'm super excited.
Oh, for sure. No, and I completely agree too. I feel like as independent artists, we're always going, 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 and we never take breaks. So I completely
No.
agree. Well, I'm so excited you're joining me today because we are going to be talking all about musical expression and we have lots to cover. But before we get into that, can you share with the listeners a little bit about yourself and your songwriting journey so far?
Yeah, so I basically started songwriting when I was 18. I was kind of late to the game, and I basically wrote a few songs just with people locally who kind of were around about the open mic night scene in my area, and I decided I wanted to start instead of singing other people's songs, kind of writing my own music, and from then really it became a real passion of mine. I released my very first EP, which was called The Quiet Kind, in 2016, and that was basically summing up who I was as a person and kind of growing up with music and growing up as being a what I call an introverted extrovert, which we'll probably get onto a little bit. But yeah, so that was the first release in 2016, and then there was a little bit of a gap when I kind of went to university and I ended up getting a job working in the NHS. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, I decided I wanted to kind of go back to releasing, and I released my second EP, which is called Dear Daughter, and that was about kind of looking after the youth and looking after young kids, and also being like a mother figure. And like I'm a stepmom, so it was kind of about that whole experience. And then yeah, through that, pretty much, I decided that I was going to release my first album, and released the first album last year in November last year, 2021. And yeah, at the minute I'm heavily gigging and kind of just pushing myself as an independent musician. And yeah, it's my life now, pretty much.
Perfect. Oh, it's awesome. And by the way, I love your album, Something Beautiful. It's incredible.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm really excited to get into this chat. So, can you kick things off with a quote by Karl Lagerfeld?
Yeah, so I chose this quote because it really resonated with me as a quote that I absolutely adore. It's music gives color to the air of the moment.
What does this mean to you?
So yeah, the actual quote, it really just sums up music in probably the best way possible, because I guess music it's an emotive experience for everybody, and I mean I always think of it like as if somebody can't see, they can hear. And I guess the music can kind of describe what people are seeing and how people are feeling in that moment. And music is everything to me. It is the color in life, and sometimes the darkness in life as well. So yeah, I feel like that it's a really great way of describing music, because it's the color, it's the way we see situations, the way we experience them, and the way we kind of feel them emotively. And I think yeah, the quote is absolutely fantastic and one that I really resonate with.
I love that. That's great. I think too, like me personally, sometimes I will think in colors as I'm either writing or listening to music. And I think that's really interesting because once you start getting into like happier, up-tempo songs, very bright red, orange, yellow kind of things, but when you have a very emotional ballad, you kind of envision blues and greens and purples and cooler colors. And so I think it's really cool how we blend the kind of art, visual art, with this auditory or the music. And once we get into like writing and we want to make our listeners feel something, right? So we need to convey that emotion. And by having this approach and this metaphor of like music as colors, I think that's absolutely amazing because we want to translate whatever emotion we are feeling when we're writing the song to our listeners. And though we can do that through the lyrics and the story, I think what it really comes down to with the emotional connection is the musical choices that we make.
Absolutely. Well, I couldn't have described it better than that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like you say, color is everything when it comes to writing a song, and I definitely think in a similar way to you. Actually, when it comes to writing, I feel I almost instead of color, I kind of see it as almost like a season. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, like it, and within that, obviously, there's colors and there's different things that you kind of see. But yeah, like you have your kind of summery songs, and then you've got your. I write a lot of autumn songs, a lot of autumn and winter songs. I would say songs that are kind of either there for your cozy days when you're tucked underneath the blanket, or the days where you just you just need a hug. I, but yeah, so it's a very similar kind of way, I guess, to think of it. Like you say, thinking of colors, thinking of the seasons throughout the year. And I think that that quote actually kind of describes that in a lot of ways.
For sure, too. And I love how you bring up the seasons because when it comes to releasing our music, that can definitely tie into the vibe of the song and what kind of colors it brings to mind or emotions it brings to mind. And that can kind of indicate whether it should be a summer single or a winter song or that kind of thing. So I think that's definitely something that can be kept in mind when planning releases as well.
Yeah, and branding as well. When it comes to how we present the track, not only kind of in what platforms, but also, how do we present it onto our social media? How do we build a story but without the actual music? A lot of the time when we're promoting music, we're promoting it through visuals, and that's not always video, but a lot of the time it's pictures, and through that, what kind of, photo shoot do I want to have when I'm releasing this song? What video am I having? And what the colors and what's the grading going to look like in that way as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love how you brought that up because I'm just thinking back to like when I released my song Will I Ever, the main color was blue. So everything I tried to do with that song, I always had blue tied into it. And then my new project I'm working on, my EP, It Is What It Is, it's very bright, bold, and fiery. So a lot of the colors are like red and burnt orange, yellows, bright colors like that. So I think, like you said, it definitely ties into everything we do with our music, not just the song itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way, like in the quote, it says like the air of the moment. I guess that's the feeling of the moment. I would kind of interpret that as the feeling of the moment, and then the color just describes that. Um, it's how we present music, basically.
For sure. Yeah, perfect. So now I want to talk about kind of taking our lyrical concept that we have for a song and setting that to a music or color palette that makes sense. So what is your process when you know what you want to say in a song, whether it be after you write your lyrics or writing the lyrics and music at the same time? How do you go about deciding what texture you want the song musically to have?
It's kind of crazy for me, Demi. I tend to write so when I'm writing like the music, so I'll write the music first before I kind of come up with the lyrics.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's a
Okay.
bit of a strange process. A lot of people are kind of confused by my process. A lot of people, yeah, a lot of people, like you say, they'll have a concept and or a story or an idea, and they'll sit down and then try and write that. Where for me, it kind of happens the other way around. I'll write whatever just comes out. There's a feeling there, whatever comes out, either when I pick up the guitar or when I'm sitting at the piano, and then the story comes after it. I write almost the music, and the music gives its own story, and then I write the lyrics after that. So that's actually quite a tricky one for me, really, because like I say, anytime I've ever tried to write a song, say I was to say, I want to write a song about the mountains and about nature, I would really struggle to do that. I'd have to be in that moment first, and the music would have to come first, and then the story would come after that. So yeah, a little bit of an interesting one, really. But in that way, it kind of makes it really easy because it's already there. if you know what I mean. It's already done.
That's so interesting because the only time I really do that is when I'm top lining a track. Like I've been set a couple tracks to top line recently, and so that forced me to kind of get the atmospheric quality of the track and top line it and write lyrics and melody to it. But I like when I'm writing on my own, like I definitely start with like lyrics or a concept of sorts. So it's really interesting hearing that you do it the other way around. So can you just like pick one of your songs, maybe one of your favorites or one that you really like, and kind of talk through the process of getting that musical idea first and then building the story around it? Because I think that's extremely interesting.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much every single one of my tracks, really. I mean, similarly, like you say, when you've done top lining before, I've done that myself, and I find it quite easy because it's a similar process, except I've just not written the music. So yeah, when you talk about kind of a singular track of mine, I would choose the song "Poetry of You." Now, this is one of the songs on my album, and bear in mind that the song itself is a breakup song. It's a song about finding yourself after a breakup, and a pretty bad breakup as well. But it's not a breakup that I ever actually experienced. So yeah, I sat down one day at the piano and I was just playing this riff, and it's kind of very movie soundtrack. So a lot of my tracks are very kind of movie soundtrack. They're almost designed for film in a lot of ways, and then the production kind of just adds to that. And yeah, this riff, it's kind of like a creepy, almost James Bond kind of vibe. Kind of gives off like an angry feeling, an angry emotion. And from that, I then thought, well, this is perfect for a breakup song, and a song that is very much female empowered. It's kind of the underdog comes in and takes over, and then the lyrics just came from that. And like I say, it started off with this riff, and the dynamics of the song kind of built through that. So it doesn't always just happen like 100% music first, but it might just be a riff, or it might just be a slight chord progression, or something like that, and then it'll kind of the story then comes to mind. So that's a perfect example of, I was like, oh, this is a very angry song, but it's also kind of empowering in the way it sounds. So then I figured, like, let's just make up this scenario of this really bad breakup, and this person who wants to give some poetry back to the person who gave them their poetry, and that's what the song's about.
That's so awesome. I think this is so cool because, okay, so if you think of writing the lyrics first, you have a story, and then you need to recognize, okay, what is the emotion I'm trying to convey, and what musical choices can I make to convey that emotion? So I feel like in that way, you're taking more thought into like really bringing that out. But in the way you do it, it's like you have some kind of musical idea that brings an emotion because that's where the emotion lies, like we were talking about before with like the colors and all those things. The music expresses that. So if you start with an idea like that, then you get all these ideas in your head about what the story could be that's already rooted in that emotion, and I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's exactly like that, and it surprises me that more people don't do it like that, really, because I think, or mainly because I feel like I'd struggle to do it any other way. I know that because I've tried, I've tried to write a song about something in particular, but I don't know if it's because my songs are very emotion driven. So I will write depending on how I'm feeling. So in an essence, it's kind of the same process. It's just that it comes out through the music first. I would struggle to write lyrics first and then try and fit them into a melody for a start. But yeah, it's cool that you actually say that I've got an interesting process, really, because I've never really thought of it like that.
No, it definitely is interesting. I think for me, I'm actually surprised that I don't do it the way you do, just because I grew up playing piano as my main instrument before I even started songwriting. And so I always play these very beautiful classical pieces that I would have to convey emotion without words during concerts and recitals and all those things. But I feel like once I started writing, I'm so focused on the story, but I think afterward, because I'm so in tune with the musical side and have that classical training and all of that, I'm able to bring in like what chords make sense to express this emotion and what instruments would make sense. So I'm able to bring that in, but I think it's interesting after hearing you talk why I don't do it the way you do it just because of all my training with piano.
Yeah, very much so, especially because 'cause I'm like the opposite. I only started I only started playing piano when I was 21. I'm
Oh wow.
28 now. So, and I wouldn't say that was particularly amazing on the piano. I can play it enough to kind of portray what I want it to say, and kind of aid the song in the way it's meant to. But I'm definitely not, I'm far from classically trained. And and I think sometimes that's another one of the reasons why I do it the way I do it, because I'm a lot of the time I'm just messing about on the piano and just trying to figure new things out and almost trying to teach myself, and then something happens and I'll just start singing, and it'll be random words and random emotions, and sometimes the odd word will stick and it'll kind of sit around that, and more often than not it tends to be the title of the track that kind of comes out, and then the story shapes around that, really.
I love that. I love how you just explore. I feel like I need to do that more because I feel like just because I know so much music theory, I'm sitting there playing. I was like, oh, this is a C add 9 and this is a G suspended 4. And like all these technical things are going through my mind. And then, like, in the classical world, there's certain progressions that, like, this chord can't go to this chord and like classical music rules. But then I'm like, I'm not writing classical music. I just need to write what feels right. And so I feel like I need to break out of that a little bit. So, in a way, you have some nice freedom that I don't have.
Yeah, I talk about this all the time with people. I think sometimes to protect myself in the sense that I know that I'm not musically trained in any way, like at all. So I think sometimes when I'm in a situation, I always try and think, well, how can I make this an advantage? And like you say, having that freedom to just not really care about like anything really, other than how cool the song sounds. I do think it gives me an advantage. Obviously, there's a lot of disadvantages that come with it as well, but that's one of the things that I'd kind of take and run with, and that might be, like you say, one of the reasons why I do start and finish songs in that way as well.
No, for sure. That's awesome. So let's bring the lyric and melody together for a couple of minutes here. So I know something you're focused on is really making the lyric fit the melody. And so, what is your process of knowing what words to emphasize or just fitting the story that you come up with after you have the musical idea so it makes sense with a melody?
Very similar situation, really. So I tend to just, like I say, I'll start with the it does tend to be the piano these days. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because it's a little bit more laid out in front of you. But yeah, so in terms of how I get the lyrics to fit the melody, it's I'll just sing any random words. Like it can be anything. Like it will make no sense whatsoever. And then, like I say, every now and then a lyric will stick, or a word will stick, and it kind of will really stick with that piano part or that musical part. I'm trying to, like, I'll give you a quick example. So I was writing a song the other day for my band, and it's called Renegade, and I just kind of said the word renegade as I was singing this melody, and I figured, well, that's a cool word, and there's lots of stories you can write about that, and then from that, I kind of decided I was going to write the song about um somebody who runs away and somebody who kind of runs from the problems, and I did that. So in terms of getting the lyrics to fit around that, it is sometimes like putting like a puzzle together. Sometimes it tends to be the first couple of lines come pretty quickly. Choruses tend to come pretty quickly. But every now and then I'll get stuck on like a certain part, and I'll be like, oh, how can I, like, what does the story need to portray now? And how will it fit in with this melody? Because obviously melody is emotion in itself. So, if you're kind of going for a really high, powerful note, you want it to be the lyric to be equally as powerful. And similarly the other way around. But yeah, that's a fun bit for me. Once I've done that, once I've kind of got the melody and I've figured out the cool part, it's like getting the lyrics to fit in, and making them sound as epic as possible. That's like the fun bit for me.
That's awesome. I love hearing your process because we're literally so opposite. Like, I usually do a lot of free writing and sensory writing. So I have like all of this content that I pick through. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool title. And these are cool lyrics. And I kind of piece it together like that. A lot of times I do it with the melody at the same time, but there are times where I get like a full lyric draft before I even start the melody. And so for me, because I don't start with the melody itself, I'm really focused on rhythm of the lines and like the syllables. And so even though I don't have the pitches yet, like speaking them, like they have to be in a rhythmic pattern that sounds poetic in order to fit a melody, to have that kind of cohesiveness throughout the song. And so I think like no matter what way, like there's not one way to write a song as we're clearly seeing right now. But no
Yeah.
matter what way you write a song, like there's always things that come naturally and things we need to work on because sometimes things don't fall into place as easily. But I definitely think like emphasizing the words that need emphasized at the right points, like you said, like higher notes, powerful things. If you're really delivering a story and something that is more dense with details, a more static melody works because the focus can be on the lyrics. Something more story can be more open and big message. And so I definitely think paying attention to what is the lyric saying and what is this musical idea saying and making sure they fit together.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing, just in a kind of different way.
Right, for sure.
But like, well, but like you say about like the percussive elements of songs and how many syllables, I do that, but I'll just do it the other way around. So I'll kind of I'll sing a melody and it might be like did 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 did, did," and that could be like three or four words, or it could just be one really long word with that many syllables, and it kind of gives you a bit of freedom, really. But that was like a little bit of one of the melodies of one of my songs. But yeah, that's how it started out. It didn't start out with anything written down, no ideas. I don't think I've ever done that. Trying to think if there's ever, in fact, okay, there's a couple of times where I'll kind of write. It's weird. This is kind of strange. So like I remember one time I was actually brushing my teeth. I was getting ready to go somewhere, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna brush my teeth." So as I was brushing my teeth, I don't know why, but this kind of phrase popped into my mind. And like I say, I don't ever do this. This is kind of really what random for me. But it was I'm only happy when I'm sad. I'm only sad when happy's mad.
Oh, wow.
And so I wrote that down. I was like, "Oh, that sounds cool." Maybe one day I'll be needing a lyric, because I'll have a melody and I'll have, and it literally happened. And I wrote this song, and it's called "This Side," and it's one of the tracks on my album, the second track on my album, and it just kind of fits so well into this syllable pattern, this percussive melody. That lyric just happened to fit in, and then it shaped the whole song about opposites and how we can feel so many different ways, and how sometimes we don't know how to feel, and that's what this side is about. And it's just strange that lyric that I had written down prior to the fact actually just kind of really slotted nicely into this melody phrase that I'd created.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like we all have those moments of
Yeah.
something comes that's not usually what we do. Because going back to my song "Will I Ever Again," the chorus melody, I got in my head at one point. I think I was like out somewhere, and I was just singing like da 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 da. And people were looking at me like, "What is she doing?" And I ended up using that in that song. So I feel like we get those fragments from time to time, whether they be lyrics or melody. But I think the true magic happens when you find them matching. Like when you get that
Oh,
lyric that
yeah.
fits and that melody that fits, like it's the best feeling
Yeah.
when you're
That's
like,
like the
I
drug.
did it.
Yeah, that exactly that. That is the part where you just go, "Oh, that is beautiful. That sounds so good." And there's nothing worse than when you write a song and the lyrics just aren't happening, and it's just, or whether it's the other way around, and you end up having to abandon it because you're just not 100% happy with it. But but like you said, alternatively, when you do get that moment where it just all sort of slots together, it's just the best feeling. It's the why we do it. It's why we create, and yeah.
For sure. So now I want to talk a little bit about dynamics. This is something that you brought up a lot. And so can you just talk over what musical dynamics in your song means to you? Because I know this is something that makes you quite unique.
It's kind of everything to me, really. Yeah, there's I have a lot of songs that start off on a level and they build, and then they go back down to another level, and then they build again, and then they'll end up in this kind of epic way. A lot of my tracks do that. The majority, I would say 90% of my songs are very dynamic. They have moments of very, very soft, kind of intricate, low volume. It might not even be at the start, but it could be at any point during the song. And then I have very rarely, but I purposely have got a couple of songs. One of them being "This Side," which I was just talking to you about now, which is very, very low in terms of dynamics. But that's one of the only tracks that I have got that actually doesn't start off at a certain point and get to this other kind of epic, huge part. Um, yeah, so dynamics. I talk about dynamics quite a lot because I really just enjoy kind of taking the listener on a ride, really, and kind of making them feel uncomfortable, and so, but in a good way, in a way of like, oh, what's going to happen next, and where's she going to take me next, that kind of thing.
I love that. I feel like that's something that I do without being extremely conscious of. Like thinking back
Yeah.
to a lot of my songs, like we definitely do build ups and drop back down at the end. Especially a song I co-wrote with UK artist Lindsay Farrow. We did a thing where it started very delicate, build up. The bridge is extremely powerful, and then the last chorus is just piano, some light strings, and her vocal, very intimate. So like I have songs like that of my own too, but I think like I haven't really thought a whole lot about it. I just kind of like do where my heart takes me, and in the studio when we're layering the instruments and all those things. But I think like you bring up a great point of like being more aware of it, like even during the writing process and kind of envisioning that song musically in your mind. Because if you have a very powerful and emotional part of the song, like there's things you can do musically to bring that out. And then there's also things you can do to make songs sound more intimate in certain places. So I know, like for you, like you mentioned this side, which is one that's not as dynamic. So for you, why are or what are your kind of decision making moments of which songs to make more dynamic and which ones to keep less dynamic?
Yeah, so the majority of my songs are very dynamic, like I say, and I don't I, like like you said, I don't think I started doing that on purpose. I think it just kind of happened without me really knowing it, and then as time went on, I became aware of it, and people comment, people they'll say, "Oh, I either like this or I don't like this," because it is in some ways can be a drawback. There's not many pop songs out there or songs that are on kind of commercial radio these days that are dynamic. A lot of them tend to start in a place and they don't really build too much. They'll kind of just start powerful and captivate the listener straight away, right from the off, and stay at that level. That's why I don't write typically pop music, if that makes sense. So but yeah, so it didn't really kind of happen purposefully. It didn't happen with me really overthinking it. It just kind of happened. But yeah, as time's gone on, I've realized that I do it a little bit more, and it got to a point where a while ago I was like, I want to write a song that doesn't kind of make people wonder, what's going to happen next. So I'm going to write a song that isn't as dynamic. I'm going to keep it at this level. And the one of the songs I actually heard that made me think about it was Afterglow by Ed Sheeran. I don't know if you've heard that one.
So good. I love that song.
Yeah, so this side was almost I mean it's not about the same thing, like I say. It just I got a guitar riff and I figured I want to make it sound something like that in the way that it doesn't it's just beautiful all the way through. It's so delicate and it doesn't kind of at any point really go too crazy far. It just kind of sticks around this edge, but in that it's so powerful in itself. And I was like, I'm just gonna try it. So I kind of, like I say, sat down with my guitar and made this riff. And then that lyric came in, which just sort of fit in really nice with the melody that I was singing. But yeah, I purposely, because there's a couple of times when I was writing, there was like, I could make this really epic now. I could kind of really hit this high note, or I could, and I decided not to. And it's actually funny because when I sat down with my producer in the studio, and he's so used to my process now, and he's like, okay, so next chorus is going to be bigger. And I was like, no, this time we are purposefully not doing that. And it was so hard to not do that, because it just so easily could have became something that it wasn't initially supposed to be. So yeah, we had to really fight against both of our kind of driving forces to stop it from becoming really dynamic, because we just both in that sense just love dynamics in music.
Right. No, I love that. And at the end of the day, too, it's like it brings variety, right? Like, if a lot of your songs are dynamic, that's part of who you are. But adding an extra flavor of a song that isn't as dynamic is like great. Like, I think that's awesome. Like, I have a couple of songs that are fully acoustic. It's just me, acoustic guitar, and bass. And obviously, since they're very stripped and intimate, they're not very dynamic. And I think when you have songs like that, they definitely stand out from ones that are more produced, and that's just giving variety to your catalog.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that I do purpose. Sorry, I don't do purposely write in so many different styles as well. Like you say, I can just write acoustically, and then I've got songs that are produced more heavily produced. A lot of the singles that I put out on my album were more heavily produced, and they've got a lot more on them. But then I've got some songs which are just like you say, just acoustic. In fact, this side on the album is literally just an acoustic and vocal. There's nothing else on it. There's no cello in the background, there's no bass, it's just that. And then I've got another song called God the Father, which is actually my next single that's going to be released off the album. And that is 100% recorded live, just me and a piano. And then afterwards, we just kind of added a little bit of cello in the background. But yeah, in a way, the album itself is dynamic in that sense.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love it. I love it. So, just to wrap up, are there any final thoughts you would like to share about musical expression?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, just yeah, just be free. If anyone's listening to this and they don't write or they want to change something in the way they write in the way they're writing, I probably would just say just be free and just let it come from the heart. As much as the industry will kind of try and take you down a path, or will tell you you need to write in this particular way, or that you need to um, tick these boxes for a song to be good. It's absolutely not true. Um, as much as every now and then it's great to do that just to kind of show you can. I think there's always an art in doing that in itself, but stick to whatever is true to how you write music, and that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Perfect. I love that. I think that's a great point to leave on because as independent artists, I think that's one of the most beautiful things is we have the freedom to explore different genres and blend genres and all those things. And when I was doing my album Dear Diary, I was very focused on contemporary pop and what does this song have to have in it to make it contemporary pop sounding. And so I think in a way I kind of had myself in a box. I love the album, but I felt like I was boxed in a bit. But now with this new project, even though it's primarily country pop crossover, there are many other genre influences, and all 5 songs on it are going to sound very different, but they're all kind of still in the same area as country pop. And I think I'm
Nice.
being more free this time around, and I changed up my process a little bit on some of the songs. So 100%. I love what you said about being free, whether that be in the writing process, the production process, whatever it might be, just being free is always amazing.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time we always think we should do things because we think that other people should tell us to do it that way, or they're thinking that, or they're not saying it. But I've found the opposite. I think it's only ever me that kind of tries to hold myself back into that genre whole thing of genre, which I've learned more and more as I go on. People don't really care. They just
Right.
want to hear good music.
Right. Jenny, this has been lovely. It was such an honor having you. Can you share with everyone where they can find you on social and listen to your music?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Demi, for having me on. It's
Of
been
course.
absolutely awesome to talk about the writing process and things. But yes, in terms of socials, it tends to be mainly Instagram, like most people these days. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And I do live streams as well on Twitch and on YouTube as well. So if you want to find me, the best way to find me is go on to my Instagram, go in the bio, click on the link tree, and literally all of my links are on there. Alternatively, there is my website, which is jennycolquitt.co.uk, and it's got all of the same information on that.
Fabulous, Jenny. Thank you so much again for joining me for this lovely conversation. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. And of course, until next time,
Stay
stay right
right
on
on track.
track.